Okay, so let's bring out our first speaker. Nina Rees is the president and CEO of the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools. I met Nina some 20 years ago when she had already begun to distinguish herself as a tireless advocate of educational equality and options for all families. Over the course of the next 20 years, Nina has earned invaluable experience working in education policy, understanding how good policy gets made and implemented. And maybe even more importantly, in those 20 years, she's become a mom and is more committed than ever to making sure every child in America has the opportunity to go to a great school. Over the past 3 years at the National Alliance, Nina has led efforts to expand federal support for charter schools, to improve state policies, and to make sure that we live up to the commitments to quality and innovation. I can think of few people in education that I admire more. I'm so proud to serve with her in this cause, and I'm thrilled we have her at the helm. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nina Rees.
Thank you so much, Brian, for that kind introduction. And good morning to all of you. Good morning. I am thrilled and inspired today to be hosting this conference in New Orleans. Because as you know, it was 10 years ago that Hurricane Katrina unleashed its terrible force on this unique city. We all remember the horrifying news. Some of you probably witnessed it firsthand. Some wondered at the time if New Orleans should even try to come back. But the people here had no doubt. They immediately began to rebuild, and in the process, they made some bold choices. One of those choices was to turn nearly every public school in New Orleans into a public charter school. More than any other city, New Orleans is demonstrating what it's like to offer a chance to every child. And the results are incredible. 10 years ago, only 54% of students in New Orleans were graduating high school. Today, that number is 73%. The gap in achievement between the students in New Orleans and the rest of the state has nearly disappeared, shrinking from 23 points to just 6 points. And most importantly, passing rates for African American students and low-income students has nearly doubled since 2003. Of course, there is still a lot more work to be done in New Orleans, and many passionate educators in this state and in this city are doing all that they can to put students and schools in this great city on the right track. One of these educators is Rhonda Dale. I was down here a few weeks ago, and I had the honor of visiting with her for a few minutes. Rhonda told me that before Hurricane Katrina, she could give her best to the students who walked into her classroom as a teacher in a public school, but she had no way of impacting what was happening to her school or to see how her teaching tools and mechanisms could impact the entire system. Now, as the principal of Psi Academy, a high-achieving charter school in New Orleans, she can select teachers who are as dedicated and as motivated as she is. Rhonda now doesn't have to wait for a district administrator to assign a teacher to her, usually a month before school starts, a teacher that she may not know or even want. She gets to decide which types of teachers to hire, which types of teachers are going to be the best fit for her school and for her students. I believe that this is the way education is supposed to be. And this is why polls show that more than 70% of the public support public charter schools. And this is why our movement is growing every year. Right now, we have a little over 6,700 public charter schools operating around the country. We have charter school laws in 43 states and in Washington, D.C. We're serving nearly 3 million students every year. Our political base is as diverse as you can imagine, and the data measuring our progress is getting stronger every year. This is progress we can all be proud of, right? But our movement also faces a major challenge. We currently have over 1 million student names on charter school waitlists. So on the one hand, this waitlist is a good sign, right? Everyone wants to come to our schools. The more charter schools we open, the longer those waitlists become. But these long waitlists are also an indicator that we're not growing and diversifying fast enough. There are just too many students that we're still not able to reach and serve. The reasons behind this are complicated, but we need to try to start to address them one by one. I'm going to touch on 3 of the reasons today. The first, I believe, is one that we can tackle in this room ourselves, making sure that we're open to every student who's interested in attending one of our schools, and making sure that as a movement, we have a sound strategy to ensure that we're filling our seats as soon as a student leaves our school, that we're committed to backfilling all of our seats. Meet Isaac. Isaac is actually here with us today. Stand up, Isaac, so they can see you. So I met Isaac recently as an intern for the DC Public Charter School Board. Isaac attends a charter school in DC called the Richard Wright Public Charter School. Isaac used to attend, and by the way, Richard Wright is a school founded by Dr. Marco Clark, someone that a lot of you are familiar with, and it operates grades 8 through 12. Isaac used to attend a public school that didn't motivate him. He's an introvert. He was being bullied. And as a result, he started skipping class, walking out of class, ignoring his teachers, and the suspensions began to pile up. One day, Isaac met Dr. Clark, and after getting to know Isaac for a few minutes, Dr. Clark encouraged him to enroll at Richard Wright. The result, a whole new Isaac. An Isaac who's so excited about school that he arrives as early as 7:30 a.m. in the morning and stays as late as 7:30 p.m. when the school doors close. An Isaac who's now considered a role model by his peers at Richard Wright. An Isaac who was recently invited to the White House by First Lady Michelle Obama to show a documentary he had made about his school. When I met Isaac, he didn't strike me as an introvert. With confidence, he told me that he loves to prove people wrong. I know all of you have students like Isaac in your schools, but the question is, and what's different about Isaac, is that he started his journey at a charter school in the 9th grade. And the question for you is, would you have accepted him if he had come to you in the 9th grade? Better yet, would you have sought him out the way Dr. Marco Clark did? Remember, this was not a student whose mom was even shopping for a charter school, right? I believe most of you would. But some of you may pause and wonder if he may not be too far behind academically. Or you may wonder if he would be a good fit into your school's culture. Right? I believe these are all legitimate concerns. But do we sometimes allow them to become excuses? Now, this is actually pretty personal for me, because when I was 14, my family made the decision to move us from Iran to the United States, and as an immigrant, in a small rural town in Southwest Virginia, I was the student that the school system didn't know what to do with. My parents, of course, were highly educated and very involved in my schooling. Of course, they moved, across from another country to give my brother and I a better education. But like most parents, they also deferred to my teachers and principals. The faculty at my school were very nice people, but they had a hard time seeing my potential. So for instance, because English was my third language, they automatically enrolled me in an easier English course. I didn't have a Dr. Clark. I don't even know the name of my principal at that school. They never sat down with me to find out what I would want to do after I graduated from high school. So as a result, college was a rude awakening for me because I realized, that's me, because I realized then just how little I had learned in high school. And this was one of the best high schools in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. They just didn't know how to educate a student who was a little bit different. And so our job as a movement, if we want to take public education to new heights, is to make sure that we are ready to serve all the students who come to us, and that we're interested in serving all the students who may not even know that they want to come to our schools, making sure that we're serving all students no matter how different or challenging they may be. So the second challenge facing our movement in tackling those million-name waitlists, of course, is state policy. And when we think of state policy vis-a-vis waitlists, we often think about states with charter school caps in states like New York and Massachusetts, where the state pretty much says you cannot open any more charter schools and serve more students. I'm going to touch on two more nuanced barriers to our growth. I'm going to take you back to the state of Virginia. You may wonder why I still live in Virginia. So in Virginia, we only have 7 public charter schools, but the state has had a charter school law for nearly 17 years. That's because in Virginia, only school districts are allowed to open charter schools. And I know some of you were authorized by school districts. There are some high-quality district authorizers out there. But in Virginia, they don't think they need the competition that comes with a charter school. They think they're doing just fine. You also have states where everything looks great on paper when you pass the law, but it's so easy to open a charter school that, yes, you can attract some talented leaders, but you can also attract some bad actors into the mix. And those bad actors end up draining resources and really dumbing down the entire movement. No one wants to operate in a setting like that, right? So what's the National Alliance doing about this? Well, first of all, tomorrow, we're joining hands with our state association partners through the State Leaders Council to sign a commitment statement to make sure that our movement is about quality, that we're as dedicated to opening high-quality charter schools as we are to also closing the poorest performing charter schools in the space. And then on top of that, our state team is working every day to make sure that we're educating state legislators about the importance of not just passing the law, but making sure that we have a sound regulatory system that oversees the proper implementation of those laws. And that kind of regulatory system is one that ensures that we're not only opening the great schools, but also closing the poor performers. Their goal over the next 3 years is to dramatically enhance the quality of charter school laws in partnership with our state partners around the country. Now, the third obstacle facing those big, long wait lists is, of course, funding. I should have started and ended with that, right? Funding is extremely important to our growth. The reality is that we have now been opening charter schools for over 20 years, but we still don't have a steady pipeline of funding at the state and local level to make sure that we launch and access facilities properly. Unfortunately, we have one entity that has been a steady partner, over the years. And believe it or not, it's the federal government. Our National Alliance federal team, there they are, is in constant contact with members of Congress and the White House to make sure that they're making the case for more funding for the federal charter school program. Their goal over the next 3 years is to make sure that we are doubling the amount of funding that's available at the federal level to launch new charter schools and take our effective models to scale. Of course, having our federal team do this work is great, but this is not the kind of work that can happen out of Washington alone. The reality is that right now we are confronted with a whole host of other advocacy groups that are competing for this same money or wondering where you're going to find the other half, right? And the voices that get heard in Washington right now are the ones that have strong grassroots support behind them. And this is where you come in. We need to start building an advocacy army that lets Washington know how deep our grassroots are and how powerful our public support is. We need each and every one of you to join us today by texting charters to 52886. Again, I know you all have cell phones. I see you taking pictures and videos. Take those phones out and text charters to 52886. When you do that, you will become a part of our advocacy team. We will then let you know when it's time to contact your member of Congress when there's an important vote, when it's time to write that op-ed or letter to the editor, or when it's time to invite a member of Congress to visit your charter school. You will then have the power to show the difference that your school is making in your community and to the lives of the students that you're serving. So again, please, you're going to hear this message often over the next few days. Please text charters to 52886 and sign up to become one of our advocates. And so this is why the National Alliance is here, to advocate and to help you advocate for high-quality public charter schools. More funding, better state policy, and a commitment by all of us to make sure that we are meeting the needs of all the students who are interested in attending our schools. A commitment to making sure that we're serving the needs of all the ISICs in our great country. And 10 years after Hurricane Katrina, it fills me with pride to be standing here before you and to see what public charter schools have meant to the comeback of New Orleans and to the future of children and students all across this great country. And like parents everywhere, I'm grateful to you for making this happen. Thank you for being here. And as they say here in New Orleans, laissez le bon temps rouler.